shit. The Shady Valley Railroad was founded in May of 1892 by Albert Jennings Wright. Wright was less of a businessman and more of a raving madman who actually started trying to build the railroad himself single-handedly. It sounds crazy considering the Shady Valley you saw earlier was a 31-mile-long 3-foot gauge road. However, that is not how it began. Oddly enough, it started as nothing but a single-tracked cog railway going up to one single iron ore mine. It didn't take long for him to hire extra hands to help build the line, and after tons of grueling work and lots of misused dynamite paired with environmental and structural damage, the Shady Valley was complete and made its first run up the track on May 4th, 1892. I didn't say mountain. I did in fact say track. The first 10 feet of track. It broke. When things did get underway, the Shady Valley was successful in hauling iron ore up and down the mountain until 1895. Mines began popping up around the mountain range and asking Wright to do business. Remembering all the lives lost, bullets spent, and dynamite wasted, Wright proceeded to have a Category 10 panic attack at the thought of building more track to the other mines. Instead of trying to extend his cog railway to the other mines, he asked the mining companies for some extra time, which he used by blowing up, carefully removing the entire track. How the government never thought to capture and hang this guy for his excessive use of dynamite is a mystery even to me. I mean, he makes Douglas MacArthur look like someone who would lay explosives carefully. He then began building 3-foot gauge track, more cleanly and with less chaos, in order to more easily navigate through the mountains. By the way, do not ask Wright where all the dynamite came from. By this point, Wright had actually gotten himself some self-respect and got a small office building, and then it started to become something in the form of a real railroad. He even bundled up money he'd gathered from the previous operations to purchase the Shady Valley's second locomotive. Although, it's often treated as the first since it was the first one with serious intentions in mind. With the construction of the narrow gauge line beginning in 1897 and new rolling stock arriving for engine number 2, the railroad set to work. It would be a while before Wright recovered from this purchase. In February 1905, A.J. Wright made a gutsy decision to buy 3 282 Mikados from the Baldwin Locomotive Works, identical copies of the Class 125 Mikados used on the Denver and Rio Grande at the time. This was what most would call a very poor financial decision, as buying 3 large freight locomotives bumped the railroad a little too close to bankruptcy for Wright's comfort. His plan was to make an insane purchase and then challenge himself to make it back with his purchase. And it worked. As it turns out, the many mines along the railroad provided an assortment of commodities, mainly ores, that the Shady Valley made a lot of profit from. This included manganese, cobalt, iron, and nickel, with manganese, cobalt, and nickel being used in the production of various components and electrical circuitry. Telephone and telegraph companies, for example, were a surprisingly large customer for this little backwoods railroad. As the railroad turned more profit, changes were made, more locomotives arrived on the scene, and more crews were hired to operate them. Hundreds more hoppers were ordered, and business was booming. Little by little, folks started to forget about that whole cog railway thing, although it did come back as a roundhouse joke among the crews later on. Well folks, that's how the Shady Valley started. More videos will be made about this railroad, and there I'll talk more about the major events that have unfolded on the railroad. Because as shiny and new as the rebuilt Shady Valley may be, crazy old A.J. Wright is still the big man in charge of it. Anyway, I'm happy to finally showcase this railroad in full, and I hope you enjoyed it too. This has been That Red Fucker. See ya.